Hi, everybody. Thank you guys for being here in the audience, and I also want to thank everybody who's tuning in at home. And we're going to have a really important conversation today. I was just on this stage a little while ago talking about how righteously pissed off we are most mornings watching the media landscape normalize the chaos that we're seeing in the country. But no more obvious place is this chaos present until it comes to black women. I hear some feet. Do y'all hear? Does somebody have their phone on or something? Back there? Oh, it's back there? Okay. We're not going to start a beef with them back there, but as long as you all can hear us, okay. So the chaos is really just running rampant through our community because we are being pushed to the breadlines by the hundreds of thousands. And it has really been a challenge, quite frankly, to bear witness to what's happening to black women after all the love that we have poured into this country. That has not poured anything back into us. Hundreds of thousands of black women have been sent to the unemployment lines. This is not even counting pre-existing unemployed black women who never returned to the workforce after COVID. Black women understood that we'd be in for a long night after the last election. And now here we are, rethinking retirement plans, scaling down our expenses, refinancing, having to think about how we're going to pay the mortgage, having to think about how we're paying for private school for kids, or having to figure out how we're going to eat. And one thing I love about black women is our directness and honesty. And so in this conversation, we're not going to have talking points. We want to have real, honest conversations about solutions and what we can do to be helpful to each other. There's been a lot of conversations about us, but not a lot of conversations with us. And just this week, this is to the people watching at home as well in the audience, just this week, the unemployment numbers, or the job numbers rather, came out. And every time the jobs numbers come out, they never disaggregate the data. It's like we're not even part of the conversation. So however good or bad it is always horrible for black folks. And they've never done a segment, or when we talk about jobs numbers, on how awful and atrocious it is for black women. So I just want to set the framing of this conversation and let you all know this is going to be a very direct conversation, and I hope by the time you leave, you're armed with tools and armor to protect yourselves for the long night that's coming. So with that, I want to start with Ann Price. And I'm starting with you because I quote you in my book, as you know, because you've given some really direct conversation around we can't do it all at the same time. And a lot of us are in that sandwich generations where we're trying to take care of aging parents, we're trying to take care of children, and somewhere in that we get lost in trying to take care of ourselves. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most dire of the Great Depression level of poverty, and 1 where we're all at least surviving comfortably, where are we today, and where do you think we might be a year from today?
Thank you for that question. I mean, I think it's clear, we can feel this in our bones, in our communities, that we've seen such a great push out of black women out of the labor force, people in government particularly, but even the private sector as well. So when we think about where we are in a dire situation. We haven't seen anything like this. So we're seeing something that's very unprecedented. So I want to say that while we are experiencing this, there are ways that we need to think about how we survive this time, right? So I think there's 2 things, and other people on the panel will speak to that. One is we need a collective practice, and that collective practice is really about thinking about the structures in place that allowed us to be here in the first place, and what we need for fair wages, what we need for good jobs. But we also need an inner practice, coming back to ourselves and asking ourselves, what wasn't serving me in the first place? What are the hopes and dreams that I put aside for this job that I had, right? And really coming home to ourselves, our wholeness.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about what we are when we disaggregate even us demographically. I rent office space in Washington, D.C., And one thing that the people who run the office space wanted to do, because there were so many people out of work, particularly black women, they wanted to have a resume building workshop for all the federal workers who had been dismissed. And I had to tell them they don't need no resume building workshop. These are professionals, college graduates who have been summarily. That's not the problem. And it's insulting to offer that. I understand your intentions are well, but it would be insulting to offer college graduates. These are some of the largest losses of college graduates of public sector workers. April, I want to come to you on this. You're representing labor. What are some tools your members have employed to survive? What is labor saying about this moment in time? And what are you saying to your members who don't have an income anymore?
Tiffany, thank you for the question. And I think what is important to note about that story you just told is that so much of the response that we get is about what's our fault.
Yeah.
Right? So assuming that I need help writing a resume is speaking to my deficits, my deficiencies. And so what I am saying and what the labor movement and what we're moving our work members and workers to say is that the material conditions that we live and exist in ain't our damn fault. It is not our fault. We are enough. We are fine just the way that we are. And what we must organize and build our power to respond to is whose fault that it is. It is the economic exploitation that we've always experienced that we have to solve for. It is the corporate greed, the anti-blackness, the white supremacy that we must solve for. And I think we have to start there and stop blaming ourselves and each other for the issues that our communities face, and we figure out how we solve for them.
Yeah, I think when you say it's not our fault, Congresswoman, I know somebody whose fault it is.
I have some thoughts,
right,
Tiffany.
And I'm righteously angry about that. But I have to say, and we may disagree on this, so I want to hear your thoughts. One thing I don't want to hear from people is wait till midterms, or midterms is going to save us. If that's what we're saying, then somehow we lost the plot. Because Congress can only do so much when you're in the minority, and I'm not so sure that these three pillars of government will uphold fascism in this way. What, if anything, can Congress do at this moment, and what are some of the challenges you're facing in trying to meet the needs of your constituents who, too, have been sent to the unemployment lines?
So, Tiffany, the biggest thing here is realizing that you're right, Congress cannot do it all, but we have an absolute role to play. And that means speaking up even when you don't think you can win the fight. That means making sure that people know that you're with them and you're leading in this moment, because at this day and time, you need to know that there's leaders in this country willing to fight for you even when they don't see the victory in sight. Because it's not always just about that vote passing, because math is math, and we understand that. But I think back to just 2 weeks ago in Georgia. We're going to have a special session, y'all, to redraw all of the lines on June 17th. They were going to literally erase black representation on Juneteenth. That was the day that they chose to close the special session. But people showed up en masse down at the state capitol. Even though Republicans control every constitutional office in Georgia, they control the House and the Senate in Georgia, a majority of our congressional delegation, but people showed up en masse, and you know what happened? The people's voices were heard, and they were like, wait a minute, we don't want to have to deal with the wrath of all of this while we're trying to run to win the midterms. And so they held off, and they didn't have that. So that's why it's not just enough to think about this in the realm of like, what is Congress going to do? It's about Congress. Yes, I've got to do my part, and I've got to make sure that people understand there are folks like me who are willing to stand on the front lines and fight for you every single day, even when it's not easy. But we also have to have community. And that's when people show up, use their voices, and make sure that they are heard, because that's the only way out of this is together. I think about the statistic, April, when you think about white women and their unemployment rates during the Great Depression. That's what black women are facing in 2026. 2026, we're still in the same boat that white women faced in the Great Depression. So we've got work to do, and we can only do it if we come together. It's not about one person in Washington, because I ignore that man, Tiffany. because I know that the work that I'm doing to close the racial wealth gap existed before Donald Trump, during Donald Trump, and it will be there after, until we come together to make sure that we're using our voices collectively to move us all forward.
I want to, yes, thank you. I want to talk about that coming together, and Ann, I want to talk to you about that. But before I come to you, I want to bring in Ty. One frustrating thing for me, Ty, in 2020, there was a lot of racial reckoning talk. How that racial reckoning working out for us these days? I mean, I think overwhelmingly black women understood that was a marketing tool. It was a brief moment in time where the private sector was taking advantage of what was going on. One thing that I want the audience to know, during that time in 2020, post George Floyd, America's 50 biggest public companies and their foundations collectively committed at least almost $50 billion to address racial inequality. But that's not where the story ends. More than 90% of that money was allocated to potentially profitable loans and investments, including mortgages. Reporting found that only $70 million went to organizations devoted to criminal justice reform. So this was really mostly a reflexive reaction to the horrific violence that we have so routinely faced. So I know that you have said companies want to do well and do good. I dare say, no, they don't. So where are we today, and what's your perspective on it?
So you said companies want to do well and do good. I said companies can do well and do good.
Thank you for correcting me.
Yes. And I think it's got to be about building it within yourself and not just being on whatever's the hot topic of the day. Because one of the things about CapiQ, our businesses, when we work with them, they were putting in the work before George Floyd. The people who are on the wayside right now were out there trying to be cute and look good and, oh, by the way, say, I'm not a racist. Don't fight me. But the ones who were putting in work were already investing in people of color. They were already investing in education. They were making sure people had access to childcare. And oh, by the way, what they saw was higher retention from their employees, greater promotions from people of color, outperformance and innovation. And so what we really need to fight about is the false narrative that diversity, equity, inclusion means mediocrity. In fact, diversity, equity, inclusion is the only way you have exceptionalism, because we run circles around y'all with half the resources.
Yeah. Yes. I want to ask a follow-up, Ty, because what you're saying that companies can do well and do good, and I think this is a time for us to tap into our imagination and really rethink what we're doing in this society. Because even that, I wonder, can they do good and do well? I don't know. So I wonder, because if they really were intentional about it, they would be funding their demise, if we're going to really be honest about it. Can we survive in this system of capitalism?
See, people like to come at, you know what, Tiffany, you came here to play. You came here to play with me. So let me tell you like this. Right now, everyone is like, capitalism is evil and we need to get away with capitalism, right? Now, let me say I put a hammer on the ground. Would you yell at the hammer, or would you say the person who picks it up can either knock you in the head or build a house? Capitalism is a tool, and the fundamental challenge of the way it's wielded right now is it's driven by people who are focused on scarcity, who are focused on undermining each other. But what does it look like when it's focused on abundance and the wealth that we already have, especially black women? Because when black women have resources, the first thing we do is help other people. Yeah. Right. And when we grow and build our businesses, we grow it in a way where we take care of each other. And this is not a theoretical thing. We work with $3 trillion of assets under management with businesses, and what we see is 10x growth in those portfolio companies when they invest in ways that actually help their workers and their communities thrive. So this is a false narrative that folks are trying to do to help us fight within each other instead of collaborate towards the outcomes we know we can achieve.
So you say we can thrive in capitalism. You think that is a fundamental
We
system?
can thrive if we drive it with the values innate to our community instead of, as I've said before, cosplaying colonizers and trying to make it a way where we're driving scarcity and competition amongst each other.
So this is a philosophical discussion that I'll come back to because I want to bring Ann in, but doesn't capitalism require somebody to have less and someone to have more? Is that the fundamental belief of capitalism? Yes. Okay. Well. Okay. So Ty said I came to play.
We're
So
getting spicy.
I'm gonna bring it in to answer that question because I saw you nodding like you have thoughts. If you want to answer that question, but I also have another question for you. But I
Sure,
wanna
let
bring
me
you in.
quickly answer it. First of all, this is an incredible panel, so can we just give a huge round of applause? Thank you so much once again for having me. So I mean, I think when we think about economics, it's really about maximizing scarce resources. So if we're talking about capitalism, it is about, you don't have a whole lot of resources, not everybody can get it, and so there's sort of a hierarchy that is built outside of that system, and so it perpetuates these sort of relationships where some people have more and some people have less. And we're starting to see a little bit of a movement towards socialism. We're not going to get into that today, but I think my point here is just that people who are staunchly capitalist, I think a lot of times are very much thinking about scarcity and maximizing that scarcity.
So the question I wanted to follow up with you on, Ann, is I know you wrote a wonderful book.
Oh yes,
about
the double tax.
Yes, the double tax. And we all know the double tax that we confront here, but something that I found really interesting about you is you're a naturalist, a naturist. I don't know the
Oh,
proper...
you're talking about like a birder?
Yes, but beyond being a birder, because I saw that, I wonder your thoughts on, as we try to survive this space, something that I've been focused on is even when the Congresswoman talked about showing up for each other, it's like if I have nothing, how can I show up for somebody else? And one thing I've been exploring, and I've seen a movement happening, is people leaving like metropolises and having land and growing their own food. And so I just wonder, all of you ladies really, but because I know that's your space, is that an option that we should be considering?
Yes, so I think what you're speaking to is something that I would say really summarizes down to betting on black. So one thing that I've realized kind of writing this book and also doing the research that I'm doing where I'm focused on making it easier for us to get jobs in the economy is that black women are reliable for black women, right? When we show up for each other, we're able to grow economies even within the scarcity that we exist in within capitalism. And what I mean by betting on black is I feel like a lot of times we underestimate our economic, cultural, and social capital, right? The reason why Target is trying to court black folks right now is because we are withholding our dollars deliberately. And so I think that when we talk about reinvesting in black communities, it can be an effort that we decide together to do. And I would even say more so that Black Wall Street isn't a myth, right? This is something that's existed in time. Even before, enslavement and colonization, African systems existed where people were economically thriving. One thing I want to note really quickly on this point is that my favorite sentence to say in 2026 is that the world is about to get a lot blacker. I don't know if folks know this, but this is part of the reason why there's political crash outs happening all over the rest. Namely, what's going to be taking place is that 25% of the world's population is going to be black in the next 20 years. 25% of the world's workforce is going to be black in the next 20 years. And so what I will say at this point is that betting on black ensures that you have a high return on your investment. And so if you're betting on a black business, betting on a black community, that ensures that we are growing our black communities beyond what we think is possible.
And if I may jump in, I really appreciate this betting on black because I think so much that has happened in our community, we fed into the hype about individualism. And if there is nothing on the 250th anniversary of this country, there is nothing more American than this notion that all you need is yourself. And I think that that is not who we are. That is not our culture. That is not our people. And that it is our collective power. It is our collective action that is going to be part of the key to our collective liberation. If we are not all free, if we are not all liberated, none of us will be liberated. And so that's one of the reasons why I do what I do about bringing workers together in an organization to build our collective power and to take collective action. We need one another now more than we ever did. And it's to stand up in the face. And I think we also have to create a set of shared principles and shared values. We don't have anything that we believe in anymore. for one another, that I can look and see you and know that my fight is your fight because we have a set of shared principles and values. So absolutely, let's bet on one another and our collective power so that we can go out and get what we deserve.
I think to that point, if you kind of go back to one of the benefits of black women and our resilience is if you look over the last 6 years, black women-owned businesses have grown 102%. They've employed over 600,000 people and have $60 billion in revenue. And that often comes not just from our resilience, but from the fact that we're having all these challenges in the workforce. And we said, you know what? We're going to do that, and we're going to take something for ourselves. But 1 in 5 black people are hired by black businesses. So the more we grow and invest in our own, in ways that actually reinvest the revenue and dollars in our community, that's where you start to take that capitalist mindset and make it a collective action. And what we got wrong before is we thought exactly like you said, I have to be the hero at top of the mountain instead of when I got some, we got some.
Can I jump in there and talk about wealth for a minute? You talked about what are we facing currently. Y'all remember 2008, the Great Recession? Well, during that time, black people had the largest confiscation of their wealth in modern history. 7 generations of wealth was taken from us in 2008. And so when we look at what's happening today with black women being pushed out of the labor market, the types of jobs, particularly in government, where we had the greatest opportunities for wealth building because we had really great benefits, we had pensions, those jobs have now been stolen from us and taken from us again. And so what we need to really focus on is how are we going to hold on to the wealth that we have, and what ways can we actually build wealth from work, right? We're gonna have to find creative ways. Business ownership is one of those ways, but this is our task, to think about how do we hold on to our history and how do we hold on to our wealth.
Congresswoman, I want to bring you back in the conversation because I'm listening to you guys, and maybe I'm a doomsdayer these days, but I'm still listening to what you're saying about, oh, we have to invest in our own, we have to build our own wealth. Yes, I understand that, but I'm also struggling with a history that tells me that has not been our savior. The people of Tulsa weren't bothering anybody. They were there just trying to build a life for themselves. It didn't matter that we were investing in our own. Somebody came along and snatched their lives and their livelihoods. So even all this like invest in our own, but yes, absolutely we should do that. But I don't know how to live in a country or co-create anything with people who deny us our humanity. No matter what we build, they come along. You look at the Red Summer of 1919, Tulsa was not an anomaly, it was the norm. There were white violence all across our communities where we had built our own and just wanted to be left alone. It feels like, people say this is like a revisit of civil rights. I'm like, no, this is post-Reconstruction. It feels like we are at that time. So when I hear we talk about wealth building, I just wonder, is that our savior? I don't know.
So it doesn't have to be either or, Tiffany. And I think we have to look at this in multi-lanes, and that everybody on the stage is coming from this from a different angle, but getting to the same goal. Yes. So what I'm fighting for in Congress, and when I look at how I got to Congress, and I serve in the seat that the late Congressman John Lewis held. So I do come at this from a civil rights perspective, and my district being the cradle of the civil rights movement. And I think about how Martin Luther King, he was fighting for economic justice for our people. It wasn't just about voting rights, but voting rights was a means to get us to what we needed to bring our people, get economic justice. And so we're kind of in that same framework when people want you to say you have to focus on one issue or another, or there's only one way to get there, because this is all by design. Throw the whole kitchen sink at us, confuse us, like have us coming at this from every different angle. Like they're gonna attack the care workers, they're gonna attack our economic mobility, they're gonna fire black women from the workforce, make it difficult, attack our voting rights, but everybody has a lane to play in this, and it's not just one way to get there. So when I think about this, I think about like Congressman Lewis left us with these words. He said, our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, or a month. It's the struggle of a lifetime, because like you said, these people didn't want us here. They don't want to see us thriving. And I understand that I'm working within a system that was not designed by or for people who look like me. And that's why organizing for me is so important, because that's what's going to get me to have more people thinking like me, standing up for us to get us to where we ultimately, all of us, are focused on getting.
And if I may, Tiffany, and last comment, I appreciate what you said, because this is not just about wealth building. This is wealth building in the context of democracy building.
That's right.
In the context of power building.
That's right.
Because the game is rigged. They don't want us. They don't want us to thrive. So this is about building our power in order to build a democracy that can actually allow us to thrive.
Thank you for that. And I hope you guys, this was a really great, healthy exchange of ideas and ideology that I hope at least tapped into our imagination on how we build wealth, power, but most importantly, how we build community, because that's the only way we've survived this 400-year nightmare. So thank you so much for showing up to hear us. I hope we armed you with tools when you walk away, and we will see you next time on the screen. But don't go anywhere, because there are a lot more amazing panels coming up on the GBF stage. Thank you, everybody, and thank you to my panel.